Hey, welcome to the Hidden Why podcast, episode 1128. This is my interview with Suzi Evans. She is the creator of Workbench for the Mind, a program to help others really with their mental fitness. And that's exactly what we talk about in this episode. We talk about mastering your mindset and mental fitness. There's a difference between mental health and mental illnesses Suzi dives into in this episode. She went through some fairly significant trauma, losing her son to suicide, and then after that, her husband becoming quite ill. And so a lot went on, and she actually then went out to study positive psychology and how we can improve our mental health, which will then improve our lives. And as she says, not every day is going to be a great day. We're going to have our tough times. We're going to have our tough moments, whether it's a day or a week or a whole year. But there are tools that we can use to help our mindset and help live a more fulfilled and happy life. So it's a great conversation, this one today, guys. Suzi Evans here on the show. Check out the show notes at thehiddenwhy.com for all the links to Suzi and myself if you need any help. We'll talk soon. Hey, Suzi, welcome to the Hidden Why podcast. Great to have you here today.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us, another Aussie on the podcast.
Yes.
We get a lot of
Very
international speakers, but it's good to have you here, Suzi. So thanks for accepting the invite.
No, thank you very much. I'm more than happy to be here.
So I want to delve into your story because you've now helped people master their mindset through NLP, positive psychology, and things of that nature. Is that right?
Yes, correct.
Has this always been your vocation, or is it something you got into later in life?
Um, Probably it's a good question actually, because if I look back over my life now, it's probably been leading me to this indirectly. But no, I've probably been in this mental fitness space, I suppose, for the last 7 years. Sadly, in 2018, I lost my son, named Murray, nicknamed Muzz, to suicide.
Yeah.
Um, and to say my world was whipped apart and turned upside down is an absolute understatement. So, yeah, so I sort of ventured in to find myself, I suppose.
Yeah.
And yeah, a quest for that. And a friend of mine, dear friend of mine, I went to school with in primary school, suggested that I do my diploma in positive psychology and well-being to understand my grief and what was going on.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I sort of, but to me, it was like, well, yeah, I want to study to be a rocket scientist too, because it was just not where my mindset, my brain pathways were going at that time.
Mm.
And the following year, after Muzz passed away, my husband actually was hospitalised with Guillain-Barré Syndrome. So I don't know if it's pronounced, I think, Guillain-Barré in different ways, but
Guillain-Barré
GBS.
syndrome. Yep. No idea what that is.
No, well, neither did we. So didn't know how to pronounce it, let alone spell it. So
What
he
is
was.
that?
So what it is, it's when your immune system attacks your peripheral nerves. So
Okay.
basically, and they don't know what really causes it, but they do know that it usually comes after, um, a bout of gastro or a stomach virus or a respiratory virus. And there was a lot more of it around through COVID, interesting enough, but that might be another podcast. But um,
We won't go there
it's
today.
no, so Mick was sharing. We live on a sheep farm in the Murray Valley of South Australia, and he's a pretty fit guy and was rolling out bales of wool on the Friday. And Monday afternoon, he's in hospital, paralysed from the neck down, and spent 6 months in hospital learning to walk again. It just horrific.
What's the
And
treatment for that?
there is no real treatment. What they try and do is stop it in its tracks. So there's different variants to it. Some
Mm.
people just get it affects their face, or some people it just affects their arms or their legs. But he got a special variant, and so it affected his own. And the quickest way to explain it is if you think of a piece of electrical wire. it has that coating around it. So
Yeah.
that's like your nerve. So when your immune system attacks your peripheral nerves, it goes through that coating, and then that sheath, so to speak, does repair and regrow. But Mick's was so severe it actually went through to the nerves. So it actually damaged the nerves. So
Mm.
he came home in a wheelchair. His long-term outlook was to be in a wheelchair or a home for life.
Yeah.
And I never told him that. And so we've had discussions of this, and we actually think that helped aid his recovery because it wasn't in his mindset that he wasn't going to get well. It was just a matter
Mm.
of when. So
Yeah.
um, he came home from hospital in a wheelchair, and COVID just hit, and so they offered the diploma online. So for me, it was, a year after my son. I was probably, and I probably needed that in the isolation where we were. It was just a good check-in, and so yeah, so I did that online over 6 months, and it just. I don't know, Lee, but for me, there was stuff about the brain basics that I'd never been explained to me. And I'm
Yeah.
sure a lot of your listeners may know about them, but I didn't know. I
Mm.
didn't know about the triune brain. I didn't know about, I knew the brain was powerful and that we can do lots of things, but I just didn't know how it worked when we were actually stressed.
Yeah.
And so I was sort of like, oh my God, why doesn't everyone know this? This should be taught in schools. Like it's not going to take your problems away. But if you understand that what you're feeling is normal for what you're going through, then our own self-talk, we tend not, we're going to be kinder to ourselves and then not spiral perhaps so severely.
Mm. Interesting. Lots of trauma in a short period of time for you. Um, and
Yeah.
certainly losing your son short of his 30th birthday
Yeah.
to suicide. Yeah, I can't imagine what you must have gone through. They're grieving in that process.
Yeah, still going through it. I personally believe it's something you don't actually get through. I just think it's something that you learn to walk alongside. So for me,
Yeah.
that pain and that of Muzz is still here. That will never go. But by understanding how my brain great because it just it allows me to walk more effectively alongside it. So, and don't get me wrong, I'm a work in progress. I have some incredibly dark days still and will for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
um but to me there just had to be some purpose to this tragedy. So what started off with doing my study to help me understand what was going on in turn helped me, um it gave me purpose to try and help other people because I sort of thought, well, if it took me to late 50s, I'm 61 now, if it took me to, well into my 50s to learn this, how many people are, with mental health and illness issues so high,
Yeah.
how many people are walking around doing this? How much is actually mental, just poor mental health? And so, Lee, to jump forward a little bit, what I really try and explain to people is that there is a difference between mental health and mental illness, and not belittling mental illness, but we've all actually got mental health. So there is a difference between poor mental health and a mental illness. So,
What can you
um,
explain that?
well, I suppose if we look at, mental health, we all have mental health like we all have physical health. So,
Yeah.
if I roll my ankle or sprain my ankle, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm disabled. Okay. But if I don't look after that sprained ankle, if I don't, rest it, stress it, like do the rice or whatever you're supposed to do, have physio,
Yeah.
rest it, all that sort of bit, then it could turn into a bigger problem. And
Mm.
so, um, the physical health is the same as our mental health. We all have mental health, and some of us have poor mental health, and some of us, some of us are mentally fitter than others,
Yeah.
and some of us are physically fitter than others. But if we're not physically fit, it doesn't necessarily mean we're disabled. Like if we're not mentally fit, it doesn't necessarily mean we've got an illness. So if just because you're having a bad day, a bad week, a bad month, sometimes you have bad years, but just because that it doesn't necessarily mean that you've got a mental illness. To be clinically diagnosed
Yeah.
with clinical depression and anxiety, you have to have these symptoms almost 24/7 for a minimum of 2 weeks, and along with so many other things. I'm certainly not a psychologist or anything, but
Yeah.
um, and I think we've got a lot. I think that's where there's a lot of fear around mental health because people, we've used it for the education, which is great, but people go, oh, mental health. But they don't go that when it's physical health, they don't go, oh God, let's not talk about our physical health.
Mm.
They might if we start talking about obesity and things like that. But
Yeah,
um, yeah, so I think it's important for people to understand that.
it is.
And because of that, we've got a society that are, yes, self-diagnosing and self-medicating, and that can cause more problems too.
It's over prescribed at the moment, do you think, this mental health pandemic, if you want to call it that? There seems to be a lot more people talking about it, so I think it's a more common conversation nowadays, which is
Which is
helpful.
great. Yeah,
But at the
absolutely.
same time, we all have mental health issues, and it'd be easy to say, "Well, I've just got depression," and then get medication for treating it, when it could be
Yeah,
simpler in dealing with, like you would with your physical health. You could be physically
absolutely.
unhealthy. You go out there and eat better and walk a bit more, and you improve
Yeah.
your physical health. Same with mental health, right?
Yeah, so you don't go straight to a wheelchair, do you? You know,
No.
yeah, exactly. So, and I think if people start to understand that, and that's why I started using the term mental fitness. My
No.
younger brother had been in a training session and someone had used it, and he said, it was really good because there's still a bit of stigma sometimes around that word mental health, because they relate that to depression and that, whereas, we don't always relate physical health to obesity and things like that. So yeah, I think you're spot on, Lee, that it's great because people are talking now. It's more in a conversation. Um, but we've also got then the people perhaps not reaching out earlier because they're fearful that they might have a mental
Mm.
illness or a mental health. And then if we think of back to like that sprained ankle, so if they're instead of having depression, if they're feeling depressed one day or one week or whatever, they've fight with their partner or they're struggling with finances, that's normal.
Yeah.
That's not a mental illness. That's actually normal. And so this is what I said, by understanding how it works, feeling that what you're feeling is normal for what you're going through. So when the situation resolves, your emotions will resolve.
Mm.
Now, when the situation resolves and your emotions don't resolve, then that may be a mental illness. But majority of people, that's life. We're on a continuum. So,
Yeah.
our levels go up and down several times a day, a week, whatever. Most people's mental health is quite poor on a Monday morning, 8 o'clock, going to work. Friday afternoon, it's high, so that's normal. That's
Yeah.
normal for what we're going through.
We
Um,
all have bad
so I
days, and I think to acknowledge that it's not, not every day
absolutely.
can be full of joy.
No, and I think that's what I mean. People think, oh, positive psychology. It's not about being positive all the time because, as you just said, Lee, life just doesn't work that way. But what it is about is understanding, what happens, which is understanding our triggers. Um, the basic concepts are all the same. But for me, you know, um, I've got my grief that's there and that loss. But if I start feeling down or out about something else and I don't know, it's actually leaning into it. It's actually sort of saying to myself, okay, what's going on? And for me, well, the basics are the same, but for me, it's definitely highlighted that if I don't get enough sleep, if I eat too much of the wrong foods and too much of it, and if I drink too much, and I don't do some form of exercise, and I don't mean going for a run or jog, I mean even just a 10-minute walk, something just to get your body
Mm.
moving. So if I'm feeling a bit out of sorts, I might go, okay, what's going on? And so then I'll go, like, my worst is probably after Christmas and Easter. Because I'll go, okay, yeah, right. You ate too much chocolate, so too much sugar. You sat up late, you had the extra glasses of wine, you're not getting your sleep and you haven't been doing your walk. So I put those practices back into place and I start feeling better.
Yeah,
That's looking after my mental health or my mental fitness,
yeah,
okay? As opposed to my grief that, is probably on a form of, post-traumatic stress disorder and that sort of thing. But they're two completely different things, if that
mm.
makes sense.
So there's a direct correlation between your physical fitness and your mental fitness. Um,
Definitely.
by going for a walk and things like that, and it's a level of awareness around that. I remember a time, probably a decade ago now, and I was in Japan living there, and my family went with me, and I just had I don't know, the weekend was not good, and I felt really, really down. And I just forced myself to get up and go for a swim. And almost
Yeah.
immediately, my mental fitness came back and I started feeling better about myself. And it's so easy
Yeah.
to go through those moments, whether it's, significant trauma, like you've experienced, or whether it's just you're having a rough day and, you're not figuring out purpose in life or whatever it might be that's getting you down. To have those tools, looking after your health by going walking or eating well, certainly is a big part of it.
Absolutely, Lee, absolutely. And on that, one of the best things, farmers are more intelligent than they give themselves credit for, or that we give them credit for a lot of the time.
Yeah.
They're often uneducated but highly intelligent, with their life experiences on the land.
Mm.
Um, Best thing I know my husband Mick did for me, because I was in bed for a long time, didn't want to get out of bed. And God bless him, every morning he would come in and I had to get up. I had to get up. I had to wash my face, brush my teeth, have something to eat. And if I wanted to go back for bed for the day, I could, but I had to get up and face the day every day. And, probably 7 or 8 times out of 10, I didn't go back to bed. So it's exactly what you said. It was just getting up and facing that. And that was like a good old fashioned, way to face the day. And
Yeah.
you, you're spot on. Just take yourself for a walk. If it's at work and you're not straight, you can just go for a walk and grab a sandwich or go for a walk around the block. Or, we don't have to start doing massive workouts and things like that. It's just
Mm.
getting that moving. And when you look at our lifestyle now, our lifestyles are in front of computers. It's very technology driven. So we're not physically uh, as active as the generations before used to
Yeah.
be.
Yeah. Spot on. I think getting started is often the hardest part in life. And when you're having those down moments, it's certainly more relevant, right? Just to start. And I spoke with James Clear about his book, and I think it was with him anyway. He talked about, starting an exercise routine. It doesn't have to mean that you go down and do 100 laps at the pool. You can go down there, put your swim togs on, put your feet in the water, and that's enough. Like you getting up
Yeah.
in the morning, if you just put a habit in place, and I'm just going to start and do this, even if it means getting
Yep.
up, washing my face, having something to eat, and going back to bed, that part of
Yep.
starting will actually encourage your mind to do a bit more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what we do, Lee, is, uh, when we set it too much. Like a lot of people do these, and I've done it myself too with weight loss and that go, I'll need to lose 10 kilos. So you want to lose it straight away. But and we set ourselves up to fail all the time, and wonder why it becomes too surmountable. And as you said, so you just don't want to start. But if you break it down into workable small pieces, they're very productive,
Hmm.
So I love that of just sitting in the pool, putting your water there. It's very much so. And for me, I go for a walk. I'm not a morning person, never have been. My father used to say, nearly come in with a whip and a chair. I was like a lion in the morning, because and then understanding that the prefrontal, the front part of my brain that gets going takes a little while to get woken up. So for me, just going for a 10-minute walk. Some mornings I might go for an hour. Some it might just be 5, 10 minutes, might be just with Mick to walk down to the shed to the ute, but I have to get my body moving for the morning to wake up my brain, so to speak.
Mm.
And then I feel great. Now I'm set for the day. Whereas most people, and when I was in the city, used to do the same. It's quick, grab your coffee, jump in the car, fight traffic, get there. We don't take that time for ourselves.
Yeah.
And I love, and I'm not the creator of this, but I've adapted it, is the 1% of your day theory. So I adapt into my program as the 1% of the day choose you theory. So when people say I don't have time, I haven't got time to do that, I haven't got time to do this. 1% of your day is approximately 14 minutes and 28 seconds or something. So that's out of 24 hours.
Yeah.
So if you haven't got 1% of your day to choose for yourself, like round it down to 14 minutes. So walk 7 minutes up that way, set your phone, turn back and walk 7 minutes back. If you haven't got 14 minutes to sit with your partner, your kids, then your life, something's way out of alignment.
Mm.
And the intent or the idea behind that is to make people acknowledge that we can't give what we don't have for ourselves. So if you've only got 60, 70% self-love for yourself, then that's the most that you can give to your partner, your kids, so forth.
Yeah.
Um,
Interesting.
if you've only got 60% self-respect, then that's the most you can give, because that's the only, you can't give what you haven't got. So you
Yeah.
haven't got more than that. You can't give it. And so people say to me, oh, but no, that's not true, because I put my family first and I do everything for them, and I love them more than I love life itself. And I go, bullshit, how can you? Because you don't know what it's like. And again, like the positive psychology, it's not about making it 100%. But if you use 1% of your day, choose you, 14 minutes a day to improve your self-esteem, your confidence, then that's got to have a flow-on domino effect to
Mm.
to the people around you. So um, it again, just coming back to that small step, like James
Yeah.
said, put your feet on the water. It's the same thing. Just start with 14 minutes. And if you haven't got 14 minutes for yourself out of 24 hours,
Yeah.
go to bed 14 minutes later, get up 14 minutes earlier. We're not talking hours here, 14 minutes, then
14
something
minutes is not a
serious.
long time. And if you look at the
No,
average time people are spending on social media, 60 to 90 minutes a day, you can probably take
yeah,
away 14 minutes from that. I wrote in my book, The Ultimate Life Map, three principles, so growth, relationships, and health as fundamental pillars to your freedom, fulfillment, and happiness. And I love that 1% rule, because if you could just put 14 minutes into each of those areas, you would significantly enhance your overall well-being and your
yeah,
happiness. Not that means you're going to be
yeah.
happy every day, but it's going to help.
No, of course not. Life doesn't work that way. But what we're trying to do, and this is what, from what I've experienced through that work, the diploma of positive psychology and things like what Mick did in helping me. That's why I created the workbench for the mind. And Muzz was a carpenter. So to me, the idea of workbench just made sense. And so the idea, if you think of it, it's like a lady's handbag or a car or ute glove box,
Yeah.
and we have all this stuff roaming around. When you need something, you can't find it if it's like mine. And so that's what our minds are like, Lee. So, we're in these busy worlds, this busy life, and when we do have a curveball thrown at us, we're trying to find in our mind where that thing is to help us.
Mm.
And whether it's just the rational thinking, we're trying to find it in that glove box or that handbag. So the idea, the workbench for the mind, is to just lay it all out on the table, empty it all out on the workbench, and let's compartmentalize it. Let's get rid of the lolly, chewy wrappers that we don't need. If there's faded receipts, you might need to take a copy of it and put it away for your tax return, or it may not affect you, so put it in the bin and put everything in order so that when life throws us our curveballs, we know where those things are. And it's not a one time all, like we have to go back and check this. It's like spring cleaning your house or doing your weekly
Regular
housekeeping.
check-ins. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I've really identified, Lee, and I've experienced personally, and I'm constantly hearing around in my communities is that it's zero to psychologist. So if we come back to that mental health versus physical health and mental health versus mental illness, you know, in some of our rural towns, we have to wait 6 to 8 weeks to get a GP appointment to get your mental health care plan if you actually need one. But you won't know if you need one or not until you get there. Then, if you do need one, you can wait up to another 6 to 8 weeks to access a professional counsellor or psychologist.
Yeah.
So that's more than 3 months. That's 3 months. And
Mm.
if you're like me, start Dr. Googling, your next thing is self-diagnose yourself with some mental illness, bipolar, whatever. And I don't want to go forward because I don't, that's what I've got. So that's a long time, and we
Yeah.
can really spiral ourselves down. So the idea of Workbench for the Mind is to give people those basic tools to help themselves keep themselves in check until they get to that doctor's appointment. I'm not qualified to say whether it is or isn't a
Mm.
mental illness for them, but it's just that there's no resources from zero to psychologist, you
Yeah.
know, and especially in rural areas, it's the lack of social connection and that. So, um, Workbench for the Mind is it's 10 modules. So the workbench is your well-being, optimism, resilience, kindness, balance, emotional intelligence, neuroscience, care, and hope. So they're all the modules, and I
Yeah.
go through everything that I've learnt and helped me. And I use it myself. It was quite funny. I fell in a bit of not a deep hole, but it fell in a bit of a hole again. I have my trigger times of year, and I thought, oh God, what am I doing? And they went, go to your own workbench, go to the work, practice what you preach. And
Yeah.
it just puts it all back in simple terms. Um, and and I've also found, Lee, that some of the participants have done it. It actually, because it puts it in basic terms for everyone and they understand it. There's some people that actually do the workbench and at the end go, actually, I think I probably do need to go speak to someone. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, so it just sorts that handbag, that glove box out of our mind, and you can think rationally, and then
Mm.
you can forward from there.
Yeah. Take out the clutter. I think that's really important, and that's why I think journaling's such a great practice for people to do because it again just taking it out from the mind, putting it down in front of you, you can see things a little bit more clearly and have a better perspective on what it is that might be churning in your mind.
Absolutely. And just another observation, in another lifetime I was lived in the city. Mick's my second husband, his mother's stepdad. I like to say I was original farmer wants a wife. No, I wasn't on the TV show, but through family friends. So I've been here 20 years with Mick. And when I lived in the city, I was in recruitment and radio sales rep. So I was business development. And I remember, so I'd be coming up from about 28 years ago. And, as a sales rep, we got given laptops, mobile phones to make our work-life balance, better. And I did it as a single mum so that at night I could take work home and I could still be there at school pickup and things like that. So when
Mm.
I often think on the work I'm doing 28 years on, and this was all to give us a shorter work week and more balance. And here we've got everyone still with all this technology 28 years later, and they're probably doing the job of two or three people. And we're wondering why
Mm.
mental illness and mental health issues are so high.
Mm.
Um, it's a bit of a no-brainer, really, because our TVs, our phones, our cars all have software upgrades, but our brains don't.
Mm.
And and if I can throw some stats in here,
Please do.
it's estimated that um, in Australia, 65,000 people attempt to take their life each year. More women than men, yet
Yeah.
more men follow through. And
Okay.
so the stats are 9 people a day, and they're the ones that are registered by the coroner on the death certificate as suicide. So if someone, you know, uh, drowns or they run their car into a tree or something like that, that's actually considered a road fatality or a drowning. It's not
Right.
considered suicide. So
Yeah.
we
So
think
nine a
that those
day, so
stats.
the numbers potentially much larger.
Yeah, and so, you know, it's great we're getting the awareness out there, but and the research is incredible, but again, there's nothing underneath. So what we're doing isn't really working because our numbers are increasing. They're not actually going down.
Mm.
But when you think of that overload, of 28 years and you're still working 5, 6 days a week from 8 in the morning till 5 or 6 and taking work home. Why are people taking work home
Mm.
in today's times? Technology. So most employers wouldn't like what I have to say, but I'm sort of with that technology and that you're burning people out because they're doing the job of 2 or 3 people from years ago. So there's got to be a connection there somewhere.
Well, it's creating less space for space, right? By being connected and plugged into all this technology 24/7. And whether it's for work or for pleasure, like you see it everywhere, like more and more. How many people do you see walking down the street with their head in their phone? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
that's where we live nowadays, and it doesn't give your brain any time or space to resolve its personal issues, you know? And
Yeah.
again, like you said earlier, you need to create time for this. I'm a big believer in meditation. And
Yeah.
again, it was discussed to me, if you don't have 5 minutes to meditate in a day, then you're doing something wrong, you know. But and 5 minutes alone is plenty to really help create
Yeah.
that level of awareness. And I think learn balance for me has always been a hard one. It's because I'm a bit of a workaholic. Um, and so that's something that really has been a push for me over the last couple of years, just finding greater balance. And one of the techniques I use is just scheduling it, you know. So putting it in your calendar and saying, this is an hour where I'm going to go for a swim, or this is time where it's just going to
Yeah.
be my time.
And that actually makes perfect sense to me because workaholic is an interesting term because Um, I never used to be a workaholic, but the work I do now I love and I find it hard to switch off. And so, that old saying of find what you love and you won't work a day in your life type thing.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think that doesn't feel like work for me. And I'm imagining it would be similar to you. So that's why it's not as easy to switch off. But you've got family too, so you have to make that time. And so if you're a workaholic and that's what your focus is and your key value, then yeah, schedule it. If that what makes it work, it's got to work for you, not for someone down the road or whatever. It's putting what you value the most and putting them in order. So if you
Mm,
value your work, your family, and whatever, you've got to make them work together. You don't make your values work for other people. They've got to work. Values aren't your morals. Values are what's important to you. And they need realigning from time to time when things are a bit out of whack, so to speak. So yeah,
yeah. And I
I
think
think
I think
that's
if you
great.
schedule it like you would, a job or a task for your regular work, you're more likely to do
It'll,
it. And I think the
yeah.
workplaces probably need to do this more with their employees. Say, okay, what are you doing in your life to take care of your mental health? Because that'll improve satisfaction. And saying, okay, well, you're
Well,
working these hours, but what about scheduling, time for your health or playing tennis or whatever it might be?
absolutely. And it's interestingly because I think was it last year. It's actually in Australia. It's actually a legal requirement now under Safe Work Australia to provide a mentally healthy workplace. So, you've got a bit of, and this is all unknown to us too, remember, this kind of transformation with this technology and that's very unknown. It's unprecedented, but we've got a lot of transgenerational corporations where you've got that old school, probably the era I was brought up in that, you rule not with an iron fist, but like they,
Yeah,
up, watched, got a break or whatever. And if you're not at work at your desk, then you're not working, so it's that perceived. And so you've got a lot of senior management, middle management that are still on the tail end of that
yeah,
era.
yeah.
And then but our world isn't like that anymore.
Hmm.
It doesn't like that. So, probably just as well, I'm not in the workforce now and I'm self-employed because I would be saying now, well, okay, I did this. Why? To me, that job I was doing 28 years ago, I should be doing 2 days a week and I should still be getting paid accordingly.
Yeah,
Um, because I'm still doing that work and you want me to do another 3 days, then you've either got to pay me more or that's not really physically, possible because I'm going to burn my brain out, which is what's happening.
Interesting, isn't it?
Um,
Like it's just well, it's all based on the economic sort of stats and figures and because we're all after that profits and growth. And so we go, okay, well, we've got this technology, so you can do that job now in 2 days, but we're going to give you this so we can increase that output. And that's happened since, machinery and all that. It's just continually evolved. And now we've got AI, and my God, this space is, I love it, but it's very scary because I can
it
see
is
that
scary.
you can just do more and more and still work the same amount of hours, but then your output's just huge. But when again, giving yourself that time to just your personal time, and you're right, we should be working less and having more time for living life.
And our financial situation shouldn't be indifferent because you're still doing the same amount of work,
Yeah,
So
you would
it's
think.
it's yeah, and that's where I do love the farming. Like, I mean, it's a lot of hard work, but um, we don't get mobile reception here. My mobile, we're still, we're 2.5 hours from Adelaide, and I still don't get mobile reception. Um, and so, which is a good thing. Mine goes through the Wi-Fi. So sometimes it's frustrating running a business because sometimes I might get voice messages 2 days later. We still have a landline. We need to have that. Um,
Landline.
but we're in a this technology, and we know from our kids, it's a real dopamine hit. It's an
Yeah.
addiction.
Mm.
And so the more we do it, as you just said then, oh, good, we've got this technology, you can do it quicker. So here's something else to do. That's giving it. And then we want to, as employees, we don't want to lose our job because cost of living that. So we're, oh yeah, give it to me. I can do it. I can do it. And then they're getting that hit because it's like, oh God, I achieved that. Right. What's next? What's next? So we get on this wheel and then we turn around and go, what's wrong with mental health? Or the mental health is something wrong. It's like, well, not belittling again in my opening saying was, I'm not belittling mental illness. It's very serious, but that's a small percentage of the
Mm.
population that actually
Yeah.
struggle with the mental. We need to teach, and I reckon that's a great idea in businesses to schedule time, for what is their mental fitness structure for the week. It should be part of their check-ins
Yeah.
because as a providing a mentally healthy workplace, that should be part of it. Great. This is our week coming up. This is your month coming up. Right. Okay. So you're going to be at the office here. Right. Where's your family time? Because it's the only
Yeah.
way it's going to work and
It
make it.
is. Absolutely. I think I started scheduling my week and going, okay, this is what I'm doing Monday to Friday, etc. Saturdays as well, I work typically. But I wasn't scheduling going for a paddleboard or going for a hike or things like that. And I'm still not very good at it. But I think if you schedule it in and go, that's what I'm doing this week, at the start of the week or on a Sunday afternoon, and schedule that personal time, that stuff that brings you joy and takes you away from technology, absolutely
Yeah.
fundamental. I don't know if it was you that talked about it, but providing this level of education, positive psychology in our schools, is that something that you're doing or a part of?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to now. So there's lots of great programs out there, like they really are. I think my frustration in South Australia in particular at the moment in the regional schools is there are so many different programs, but there needs to be a consistency. To me, it should be part of their taught, you know, maths, English, whatever. It should be your mental fitness. It should be right in there from
Mm.
grade one. So
Yeah.
they understand those brain basics. And there is a bit of that happening in certain schools. Um, I just did a trial of my workbench for the mind with nine with Secondary Schools Alliance, and we had 9 students in there for 4 weeks, and I delivered it face to face with them, and it was just incredible. So it was years mainly year 12s, and I had 3 from the special school, and it was incredible, and it was incredibly emotional for me too because week one, I saw these 9 students just sort of not really engaged and, sitting there. And it was 1 day a week for 4 weeks. And then the fourth week, I sort of said before closing, because we worked through what the idea was to end up with some goals and things for you to work forward with. And I said, would anyone like to share what their goals? And they were nearly fighting over jumping up to come and present to the rest of the students, which I actually hadn't asked them to do.
Wow.
But just seeing that confidence, um, by actually just slowing it down and working through some things basically, and what you touched on. So instead of going, how am I going to get through year 12, or I'm struggling with ADHD and like these things, how am I going to overcome that? We break it down into those bite size and make those little changes and put those a little map in place for them so that when you go off course, you just go back to the map and get back on course again. The
Yeah.
same as,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I love
Um,
it.
it's been great. So I'm really pushing to get the schools. I'd love to continue working. It was a trial, and I think the feedback was good. So we're in the process. But
Yeah.
one of the frustrations is that these schools have to go outside to get the funding for these programs.
Mm.
They have to go to local rotaries and things like that because the budgets in the department are just not there.
Yeah,
So
it's crazy, isn't it?
it is crazy. It
I
is really
looked at
crazy.
I lived in Japan for many years, and I was always fascinated by their health and nutrition around food. They from as soon as you start school, they share their meals. The kids are responsible for collecting the meals, serving each other, and then they talk about the food as well, and what the components are as it relates to their nutrition and health. And you can see the physical health of the Japanese is quite strong
Yes.
because of that fundamental. And I really feel we should bring that into our schooling system, but also this level of mental fitness. What are we doing from, like you said, grade one, around educating people on how to deal with their mental health? Because technology, our brains aren't wired to deal with this evolvement of technology. It's advanced so fast. Our brains have evolved over millions of years, and technology is just going
Yes.
boom, boom, boom. So we really need, like you said, the tools to help these people deal with that, because it's not going away. We know that, but we
No,
can
no.
certainly have that workbench to help deal with these things. So
Yeah.
it's fascinating. I
And
love
that's
your
what,
work.
thank you.
I
Thank
could sit
you.
here and talk about this all day with you, I reckon,
It's
because
all
we both
right.
enjoy it. But I do have to run, and yeah, really appreciate your time today, Susie, coming on the show.
No, thank you, Lee. No, happy to do it. And yeah, really enjoyed talking with you. And yes, I think we both could talk to each other all day. I might have to get you on my podcast.
Absolutely. Let me know. We might have to do a take two of this. Suzi Evans, guys, check it out, the Hidden Why podcast. All the links to Susie will be in the show notes there. And until next time, keep passion and purpose. See you soon. Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning into this episode today. I hope you enjoyed it. As I said to Susie at the end of our conversation, then I could have sat here for hours talking to her on this topic. I think it's a really important one, and one that we're both very passionate about, because life can be challenging, right? It can be tough, and they don't really give us the tools, the education in our youth to deal with the challenges of life. And I think that's more paramount today than ever before, with the overwhelm of technology and just general life that is thrown at us. We don't give ourselves enough space to deal with the mindset. We give ourselves time to deal with our physical health, but how much time are we giving ourselves for our mental health? So really important conversation today, guys. I'm a real estate agent here in Australia. I run real estate mentorship for those of you in real estate, but I also do coaching and one-on-one sessions with those that are just trying to recreate life, finding a bit more purpose, finding a bit more meaning, finding a bit more joy, whatever it is for you. If you'd like to connect, reach out to me through the website or connect with me on socials. Facebook is my preference at the moment, but I'll find you one way or the other. Hope you have a great day. Have a great week ahead. We will talk soon. Thank you.